Come, all you moonshiners, if you want to hear about the kind of booze that the
Welcome back to Barley and Hops. I'm George. We're out in the man cave today, as opposed to the shop or the store. It's real comfortable out here. Look, Ray and I appreciate all the comments that we receive from the channel, so please keep those coming. And subscribe if you get a chance. Share us with your friends. I got that out of the way. Now, stuck fermentations, or my beer stopped, my wine stopped, my mash is in the middle and it's only fermented for 6 days and it stopped. Look, I get these all the time, and I thought it'd be nice to just do a real quick video to explain what could potentially happen. Most of the time, if you research this, you Google it. Normally what you'll hear is someone say, "Oh, we just put some champagne yeast in there and it'll go." Well, that's really probably one of the last things you want to do right now. Normally, there's some simple things that could have potentially gone wrong, and in some cases, nothing is wrong. So let's explain how that works. Your yeast will ferment at the appropriate temperature, somewhere between 68 and 74 degrees. That's Fahrenheit. So in that process, when you put your yeast in there, and that's whether you prehydrate it or you just throw in the dry yeast and let it hydrate itself, and that's another topic. That's going to, once it gets started, because yeast will multiply, they will double about every 100 minutes or so, somewhere in there, 90 to 100 minutes, that colony doubles in size. Well, all of that activity is going to cause some heat, so that temperature is going to rise a little bit, and that's quite all right. The first thing I always ask people is, what's the temperature? And if the temperature is too high, now you've got an environment that's a little bit inhospitable, and it stresses your yeast, and they start to slow down. The same is true as if your temperature is too low. So, hitting that sweet spot sometimes is kind of helpful, but not absolutely necessary, because if you put it in an environment where it's going to eventually achieve the proper temperature, your yeast will not die off unless you're above, 110 degrees, or you freeze them. So give them time. That's number one. Number two, I've been watching my bubbler, and I haven't seen absolutely no action in it since I started. But I checked with my hydrometer, and it went from 1.090, and now it's at 1.030. What's wrong? My friend, nothing is wrong. You evidently have what we call a leak. And that's a leak around the edge of the bucket, because that CO2 escaping under pressure is going to take the path of least resistance. So my advice is just, stay at it, try to fix your leak. If you can't do that, just give it a few more days, and when it gets down to the proper level, you're done. Now, when all else fails, you have a couple of other options. Instead of adding champagne yeast, before you add any additional yeast, at least give yourself a chance to correct it. Now, here's what may happen. Your yeast start to propagate, and they've got this great colony going. And then the temperature's changed. They get a little stressed, they slow down, or they stop. Well, they start to settle to the bottom. Now, there's a lot of other particulates and excrement and things like that are in, because we know that yeast, they eat sugar, they expel CO2, and they make alcohol. That's kind of what they do. But they'll settle to the bottom, and then you get this layer on top that will prevent them from coming back out. Look, you can use a paddle. The first thing I'd say is, man, and you don't know how many times this has happened, is open it up, give it a good stir, close it back up, and put it aside. And almost 7 out of 10 times, that resolves it. It's just, your yeast just got to the bottom, and you just reinstitute it, shake it up. Now, that's another option. You can shake it up. Now, there are other times when we've got folks that want to get that real high percent. They're looking for that 22% alcohol by volume. Well, remember that your yeast, their life cycle is only so long in an environment. And when that environment becomes inhospitable or they're stressed, that will stop. And sometimes when you have a high alcohol content, that makes that environment a bit more inhospitable for your yeast. So what should we do at that point when we've got we've got so much sugar in there? We're at 1.130 because we really want to hit the top, which I don't recommend. 1.090, 1.1 is probably about a great limit. That'll give you 15 to maybe 19% alcohol by volume. But if you're really shooting hard, you've got a lot of fermentable sugars, and all the environmental impact aspects are not in your favor, and that yeast stops. Well, instead of reintroducing more yeast into an environment where they're not going to propagate in the first place, here's my recommendation. And I've talked with people about this, and it really makes sense and it works. Well, if stirring it up hasn't made a difference, I'm going to use water as an example. I've got a pint here. If you take the mash and just separate the mash half and half, reintroduce a little bit more water. Now, yeah, this is going to make a little bit more volume, which means your ABV may be a little bit lower, but you're going to you're going to distill it in most cases. You're going to boil off that excess water. At this point, now you've got two of them, and what we've done is we've diluted the environment. So we've taken away, or we've taken out of the environment what was inhospitable before was too much of something. So it's either alcohol or too much sugar, or things are too complex, so we've diluted them. Now, I just reintroduce a little bit more yeast at this point and give it a second chance, or stir it up. But this is an opportunity for you to recapture those that stop. Now, I hope all this makes sense. I want to make it short. And as always, until the next time, happy brewing, or distilling, or winemaking, or whatever it is your pleasure is.